It's time for change with the Carolina Panthers, and on today's episode, we're offering our pitches to fix the franchise today on the Locked On NFL Scouting Podcast.
You are Locked On NFL Scouting with the Draft Dudes, your daily podcast for NFL and college football scouting. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's better than this? It's guys being dudes here on the Locked On NFL Scouting Podcast. We're the Draft Dudes. I'm Joe Marino from Locked On Bills. He's Kyle Crabbs from Locked On Dolphins. And we are your NFL experts here with you daily to talk team building across the league on the Locked On NFL Scouting Podcast with the Draft Dudes, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. I'd like to thank you for making Locked On NFL Scouting your first listen every day, and a big welcome and shout out to our everydayers. You know who you are. Those of you who never miss a single episode, we appreciate y'all being here very, very much. This episode is brought to you by Prize Picks, the easiest and most exciting way to play daily fantasy sports. Go to prizepicks.com/LockedOnNFL and use code LockedOnNFL for a first deposit match up to $100.
Joseph, hello.
Hello.
Again. We're doing double dips. Seems like people are enjoying the content. And we're here with our Panthers, your hometown team. Not your hometown, but your now hometown team.
It's my hometown, right? I live in Charlotte. I've lived here since 1996, right? I mean,
it's not originally your hometown.
I'm a native of Western New York, but I don't know. I've lived here for so much longer. All right, plenty to say about the Carolina Panthers, but let me say this. We are going to have takes on takes tomorrow on the show, in addition to our conference championship game previews. So if you have takes, drop them in the comments for today's video. In addition to, obviously coming up here is going to be a pitch from me and a pitch from Kyle to fix the Carolina Panthers. We want to hear from you. Which pitch do you like better and why? So fill up the YouTube comments today, and let's have a multi-way conversation between you guys and us.
How direct were you with Mr. Tepper?
Oh, Kyle. Ooh, yeah. Went in big time. I've already recorded it. So we're recording the introduction after it. Yeah, I went in hard.
I have an analogy for the experience with owning the team that I got a really good chuckle out of. It's a movie reference.
Am I going to know it?
I never know with you.
Yeah.
Have you watched any movies about dinosaurs?
Land Before Time. The Good Dinosaur. Have you seen this? That's a kind of a newer one.
I have seen The Good Dinosaur.
Yeah, it's
depressing.
Maybe I saw We're Back in the 90s at some point.
Oh, that was a banger, but that's not the one that we're doing.
Oh, are you going to say Jurassic Park?
Yeah.
Oh, I haven't seen the newer ones. No, but when they first came out.
Yeah, but the original one?
Yeah, here's the thing about me. Whenever that movie came out in whatever year it was,
you moved on with your life.
Yeah, I watched it then. And do you think I can? I just know it's a movie about dinosaurs now. At 30.
You know who John Hammond is?
No.
The fictional character who created the park.
Nope.
And his big catchphrase is "spare no expense."
Is that what you said?
Yeah. And you're gonna say we're gonna spare Dave Tepper. You want to make this park not be a disaster? You gotta spare no expense. That's my tease for my pitch.
Okay. Well, I don't think Dave Tepper is going to sell the team. So,
right. So you got to go in now.
Yeah. So that was a lot of my pitch, but I don't want to spoil it.
How heavy was the influence of some of the recent quarterback development experiences in your thought process? Because it's very front row center for me.
Yeah.
Having seen a lot of different ways that these can play out.
Yeah, I certainly wanted to try to create an environment that would give Bryce Young his best opportunity to be successful. And I did very much take into account the landscape of the NFL and different things that are working out there to help quarterbacks be successful. So that was a big part of my head coach decision, in addition to how I want to build the offense up, particularly at the wide receiver position.
Yeah, I think there's always a fascinating debate between investing in the line versus the Joe Burrow, Jamar Chase, Penei Sewell meme, right?
Right. Right.
And I felt very emphatically about one versus the other. And I'm looking forward to kind of diving into it with my pitch for Dave Tepper.
Some good pitches ahead. I like mine. It sounds like Kyle really likes his, so a lot to enjoy here coming up. Stick with us. Passion, drive, and patience. What brings home the winning trophy is also what keeps your ride or die alive. eBay Motors has everything you need to maintain your vehicle and level it up to peak performance. From superchargers, roof racks, exhaust kits, LED headlights, and more. Whether you're into speed, power, or style, eBay Motors has got you covered. With over 122 million parts for your number one ride or die, you'll always find exactly what you're looking for. And with eBay Guaranteed Fit, your part is guaranteed to fit your ride every time or your money back. Because with eBay Motors, you're burning rubber and not cash. With all the parts you need at the prices you want, it's easy to turn your car into the MVP and bring home that win. So keep your ride or die alive at ebaymotors.com. Eligible items only. Exclusions apply. eBay Guaranteed Fit only available to U.S. customers. Hey, Dave. I'd call you Mr. Tepper, but I'd only call you Mr. Tepper if I actually respected you, and I don't. And here's the reality. You've made the Carolina Panthers an embarrassment and stripped the pride that so many had in the Queen City cheering for this franchise. Look, I live in Charlotte, and I hardly see anyone wearing Panthers gear, and I see way more support in the community for fans of teams in other cities. I have several friends that are just trying to get rid of their PSLs because of you. You have snatched any sort of spirit and pride in the Carolina Panthers for this community. So step one, if you're not going to sell the team, which I don't think you're going to, step one here in fixing the franchise is you taking a long look in the mirror and getting out of the way and letting football people make football decisions. Don't make this impossible for Dan Morgan as our new GM to be successful. Don't make this impossible for whatever head coach you ultimately hire. And given your terrible track record, it's best that you take a back seat and simply write checks. So with that out of the way, here's what you need to do to fix your football team. Now, obviously, you've already hired general manager Dan Morgan. You need a head coach. And my recommendation for head coach is Bobby Slowick. We saw what Bobby Slowick did with C.J. Stroud and the Houston Texans offense this past year. An offense that for years had struggled. They faced issues all season long. This year, of course, everything's brand new in terms of the system and several new pieces. Tons of young and inexperienced players, and they made it work. And even during the season, they had injuries along the offensive line, injuries at wide receiver, and they were still very, very productive. I mean, they even had a big shift in their lead ball carrier. Everyone expected Dameon Pierce to be the guy for the Texans, and Devin Singletary winds up being the answer there. And it all led to an historic rookie season for C.J. Stroud. The Texans were division champs. They won a playoff game. And Bobby Slowick was the architect for that offense. And I want to bring him to Charlotte. And why? Well, obviously, I love what he did there, but this is really about Bryce Young. We have a lot invested in Bryce Young, and we have to give him every chance to be successful. And so far, we are failing big time. So let's get him a stable offensive infrastructure in terms of the scheme with Bobby Slowick. And we need to ask ourselves this question. How can we maximize Bryce Young? Look, he's got a limited skill set in terms of size and arm talent. So how do we get the most out of him? We need a Kyle Shanahan-style offense, and that's what Bobby Slowick brings. Slowick has 8 seasons of time on task with Kyle Shanahan. And if there's anything that's true about these Shanahan offenses, it's that they can elevate quarterbacks that have low tools, right? In terms of physical upside. And that's what Bryce Young is. The most recent examples of that being Brock Purdy and Tua Tagovailoa. We need to get Bryce Young in a timing-based offense that enables him to be the point guard and get the ball out of his hands while maximizing his playmakers and mixing in rhythm vertical shots. That's what Bobby Slowick's offense is going to create for Bryce Young and give him the best opportunity to be successful. So step one, let's marry Bobby Slowick to Bryce Young and give Bryce Young a chance to be the quarterback we drafted him to be. All right, now let's talk about how we can build around Bobby Slowick and Bryce Young. And we'll start by examining our salary cap situation. According to Over the Cap, we enter the offseason with $26 million in cap space, and we can do some different moves here to create even more cap space. This is what I'm recommending to really maximize our cap opportunity this offseason. We can restructure some players. We can restructure the contracts of Taylor Moton and get $6.6 million. Shy Tuttle, we get $2.7 million for that. Bradley Bozeman, $1.5 million. Von Bell, $2.4 million. And then we can also cut Ian Thomas and free up $2.3 million. So if we have our $26 million plus the moves that I just suggested, that gets us to $41.5 million in available cap space entering the offseason. If we want even more, we can extend Derrick Brown, who has an $11.7 million cap figure in 2024. We can extend him, reduce that cap hit, and push it out into further years to give ourselves even more cap space. And we can do something very similar to Dante Jackson if we want to as well. So we got some flexibility here. When it comes to our expiring contracts, there are three that I think are priorities for us to bring back. Linebacker Frankie Luvu, edge rusher Brian Burns, and safety Jeremy Chinn. Those are young, dynamic players. I know Frankie Luvu's a little bit on the older side of that, but these are dynamic players for our defense that I want to continue moving forward with. And, you know, our defense wasn't the problem last year. And these guys are players that we think can be part of the answer. I am fully recommending that we give all those players a market value contract extension. When it comes to our fifth-year option decision, Jaycee Horn, we could pick that up and he'll count $11.3 million in 2025 against the cap. I want to stick with that. Jaycee Horn, whenever he's been available, he's been everything we drafted him to be, and I want to continue to give him that opportunity here in Charlotte. So I'm totally fine with picking up that fifth-year option, which gets us to free agency in the draft and how we can add players that aren't on our roster right now to really maximize our opportunity here to move forward and be competitive in the wide open, in my opinion, NFC South. So we're going to talk draft and free agency here. We'll kind of take a position-by-position look. At quarterback, we are committed to Bryce Young. At running back, we have Chuba Hubbard and Miles Sanders. I would like to add a physical presence here. Looking in free agency, a guy like Zach Moss makes a lot of sense from the Indianapolis Colts, or even Devin Singletary, who really emerged. Well, he's been a good back. He had 4 seasons in Buffalo. This past year with the Houston Texans, with Bobby Slowick, would not mind bringing him over to be the focal point of our backfield to complement, really elevate what we have in Hubbard and Sanders, potentially our lead back, and then sprinkle in those other guys. At wide receiver, we have Adam Thielen and Jonathan Mingo. We need more here. This is a high priority for me. I want us to be in on separators, guys that can get open, can produce after the catch, right? We're going to install a Shanahan offense. We need speed and yards after catch ability at the wide receiver position. So we're going to be a little bit particular with who we go after. And some of the names that make sense for me in free agency, and I want to add at least one of these players: Calvin Ridley from the Jacksonville Jaguars, KJ Osborne from the Minnesota Vikings, Marquise Hollywood Brown, a big-time speed guy from the Arizona Cardinals, Darnell Mooney from the Chicago Bears, and Devin Duvernay would be a fun addition to our lineup, really dynamic return guy for the Baltimore Ravens that I think in this style of offense could really be productive with his explosive speed. So we want to get at least one of those guys, if not two, at wide receiver. High priority for me. At tight end, we have Hayden Hurst and Tommy Tremble. That doesn't prevent me from being in on guys like Gerald Everett and Noah Fant. Those are athletic tight ends, yards after catch guys. You can see what I'm trying to get here. I want guys that I can get the ball into their hands and they can make plays. Everett and Fant fit that description. When it comes to our offensive line, it's really about staying healthy at the guard position, right? We have Ikem Ekwonu, Bradley Bozeman, Taylor Moton as our 2 tackles and our center, but the guard position was just an absolute disaster this past year. Now, if Austin Corbett and Brady Christensen can be healthy, we feel like we have starting caliber players there, but we want to make sure that we have better depth. I mean, how many different guards did we play this year? We need to make sure we have some options. There's some good veterans to attack in free agency, like in Ezra Cleveland, Kevin Dotson from the Rams, which is a very clean projection to this style of offense that we want to run, in addition to Robert Hunt from the Miami Dolphins, right? We want to add players that know this scheme, and Dotson and Hunt certainly factor into that. In addition to David Edwards, who had a nice run as a starter for the Rams, was a very, very good utility blocker for the Bills this past year. I think that he can provide us with some depth as well. So I want to get a veteran guard here to help stabilize and give us a nice hedge against the problems that we faced this past season. Edge rusher, this is a high priority for me as well. I'm bringing back Brian Burns. There's no question about it, but we need a guy opposite of him, and I'm tired of talking about it. We're going to get a real player here, and so we're going to be in on some of the big-time free agents that could be out there. Josh Allen from the Jaguars, Andrew Van Ginkel from the Dolphins, Chase Young from the 49ers, Jonathan Grenard, who was unbelievable for the Houston Texans this past year, and Bryce Huff from the Jets, who's been a really good pass rusher. We're going to stop talking about getting a compliment for Brian Burns. We're going to get one right here, and so that's going to be a high priority for me this offseason. And we'll talk linebacker, corner, and safety, but realistically, I want wide receiver, I want edge, and I want depth on the interior offensive line. On the defensive line, we have Derrick Brown and Shai Tuttle. I'm interested here. I'm going to sniff around some big-time players like a Christian Wilkins, a Justin Matabweek, right? That's going to be really, really expensive. We're at least going to sniff around there. And if we can't land a veteran that we like, it's going to be a priority for me with one of our top 2 picks at 33 or 65. At linebacker, we're bringing back Frankie Luvu. We have Shaq Thompson. Our priority here is simply depth. We want to just strengthen the depth at the linebacker position, knowing that we have 2 that can play. At corner, Jaycee Horn, Dante Jackson. Be nice to get some meaningful depth here and perhaps a slot player. There's some veterans out there that I like that shouldn't be overly expensive. Guys like Michael Davis, Chidobe Awuzie from the Bengals, Christian Fulton from the Titans, Dane Jackson from the Bills. I think, adding a veteran like those players that have some interchangeability would add to what we have in Horn and Jackson. And then I'm pretty unconcerned at safety where we have Jeremy Chinn, Xavier Woods, and Von Bell. So big priorities here. Wide receiver, and I want veteran wide receivers. Edge rusher, we're going to be in big time on the free agents there. We're going to sniff around on the interior defensive line, and we're going to make sure that we get a stabilizing guard presence to give us a nice hedge compared to what happened last season. And then we'll fill in the blanks with the draft. We're going to try to get some depth, obviously, at corner, some depth at linebacker, on the interior defensive line. I want that physical downhill back. But this starts with making sure that we get the right head coach to pair with Bryce Young to maximize what he can give this football team. And I think that's Bobby Slowick. Let's get some speed and yards after catch ability at wide receiver. And let's go. Let's boogie, right? Year 2 of Bryce Young, expecting a big step, especially if we can get the coaching and the players correct around him. So that's my plan to fix the Carolina Panthers. In just a moment, you're going to hear from Kyle Crabbs, who has his own ideas for how to solve things in Carolina. So be sure to stick with us. But folks, the NFL playoffs are here, and there's still plenty of time to get in on the action over at FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook, because right now new customers can get $150 in bonus bets guaranteed when you place a $5 bet. That's $150 in bonus bets, win or lose. I love the app. It's super easy to use, and there's so many different ways that you can bet, like a live same-game parlay. You can find bets in the new Explore tab. There's a parlay hub, spreads, player props, over-unders, and more. So visit FanDuel.com/lockedon and make your first bet a layup. FanDuel, official partner of the NFL.
Good morning, good afternoon, Mr. Tepper. Appreciate your time and consideration as we sit down to talk about the path forward for your Carolina Panthers. And let's be honest here. The Carolina Panthers have their work cut out for them, but I can boil down your offseason strategy to just a few words. 2, as a matter of fact. Scheme and spend. This is all about your investment that you have made into this organization, the pursuit of a quarterback. You made a decision last year, a monumental decision, to give up a ton to go up to the #1 overall pick, and you drafted quarterback Bryce Young with that selection. Bryce Young was given little to no chance to be successful in any capacity in 2023. And as you're trying to find your path forward, I think the first thing you have to do is decide who is the right coach to marry with your quarterback. Now, you have Dan Morgan, who has been elevated to serve as the premier executive in charge, an internal hire with a sterling reputation. I think that's a great start. But when you look at Bryce Young and you consider he was sacked 62 times this past season, he faced pressure on 40% of his dropbacks. And that doesn't even quantify how bad it was when Bryce Young was pressured. Bryce Young had a negative adjusted net yards per attempt on 247 dropbacks and 161 pass attempts when pressured last season. He, in 161 pass attempts while under pressure, logged 561 yards passing and lost 471 yards in sacks. You netted 90 yards across 247 dropbacks. Insanity that needs to be addressed. And that is why scheme is the first thing that we have to focus on. And you can look at Bobby Slowick with the Houston Texans. You can look at Ben Johnson with the Detroit Lions. You can look at Frank Smith with the Miami Dolphins. I think these are all viable candidates. But I think about the coach whose scheme I think can best marry with Bryce Young and can best set forth a sustainable path that matches with his personal skill set. And the coach that I'd like to propose that you hire is Dave Canales. Dave Canales is the offensive coordinator of the NFC South champion Tampa Bay Buccaneers. And in one season with Baker Mayfield, he has completely revitalized a passing offense that was horrible last season. And Ben Canales, or Dave Canales, is somebody who I'm very impressed with the ideology that he brings to the table. There's a lot of early down play action passing. There is a lot of moving of the quarterback with rollouts, deeper set points. He had a quote when asked about pass protection. Pass protection gets pretty hard. Defensive lines have to play the run first and then get into a secondary rush. You can get to a point where 3.2 to 3.5 seconds is where they're effectively getting to the quarterback if you run the ball effectively and you have a commitment to it. Minimizing drop back pocket passing, whether that's the quick game or empty or longer drops or play action passing, minimizes the time under tension for your tackles and your guards. He was asked about the philosophy of running the football. And this was the quote that he gave to John Ellis. That first quote came from courtesy of Pewter Report podcast. This coming from John Ellis. He was asked about his offensive philosophy in running the ball. You got to have a great system, great coaching up front just to get the play started. And a lot of what you do with having play actions and boots and keepers is it slows down the backside just enough to give a great player space. Some of those runs have to come off with an attitude, just knowing that you're going to get a dark crease and an ugly 2 to 3 yards, and that becomes 4 to 5, and then it becomes 12. Being dogged in your commitment to being able to run the ball in any situation, giving any personnel. And he took that and he applied that to an offensive line in Tampa this year that had an offensive tackle in Tristan Wirfs who switched sides to the left side and was completely remodeled with a ton of young and inexperienced players. And Tampa offensively had the success that they had. And I look at what Carolina has at their disposal. A young offensive tackle in Ikem Ekwonu that's looking to have less time under tension. A quarterback in Bryce Young that does have enough athleticism to move the pocket, but a quarterback that should not be asked to hold the ball for 3.7 seconds when under duress. A quarterback that should be encouraged to space the field. The entire point of this quarterback was that he was going to be a point guard. He was going to use his field vision and his accuracy. And if you're able to go out and get this guy some dudes to throw the ball to, then I think this Canales offensive philosophy can benefit your offensive line. It can benefit your young quarterback. And it's the right blend of ideology with skills, with a historical track record. Dave Canales, had great success with Geno Smith. As far as the rest of your coaching staff, I would love to see Ejiro Evero retained as your defense coordinator. This is a guy with a sterling reputation. You have an opportunity to have him continue to run your defense. If Evero moves on, Marquand Manuel, who's currently the safeties coach with the New York Jets and has prior experience as a defensive coordinator in 2017 and 2018 with the Atlanta Falcons under Dan Quinn, I think makes a lot of sense. So if it's me, I'm coming to the table with Dave Canales. And I want him to be the guy that runs my offensive structure and takes the pressure off my quarterback, even if it's not going to work with great consistency, even if there's some growing pains on the offensive line. Because as Dave Canales just showed in year 1 in Tampa, if you stick with it, the light bulb's going to come on and then you can build off of it. So that's scheme. Spend is the other part of this. And Mr. Tepper, I'd like to invoke a fictional character here. That being John Hammond from Jurassic Park. John Hammond invested in a vision that became a catastrophic disaster. The kind that people don't forget about when there's prehistoric dinosaurs rolling around eating people at your theme park. If you want people to attend your theme park, which is Carolina Panthers, you have to, like John Hammond, spare no expense. And in some ways, you've done that. And in some ways, the result has been just like a Tyrannosaurus Rex roaming around East Lanubar, gobbling people up left and right. Hasn't been great so far. Now is the time to keep chopping wood. If you get the right coach in place, you've already made this monumental investment into a quarterback. And watch the quarterback picked directly after him go on to very rarefied air as a rookie quarterback. That's not a good feeling. So there should be some urgency here. And the price of winning is cash spent. Spare no expense. Mike Evans going to hit free agency. Guess who his offensive coordinator was last year? Dave Canales. Dave Canales has experience with DK Metcalf and Tyler Lockett and Chris Godwin and Mike Evans. He's got dudes. Calvin Ridley would be an excellent separator to bring into this wide receiver core. Hollywood Brown. Go big game hunting. T. Higgins. Whoever that marquee receiver is, obviously you're committed to Adam Thielen for another year. It doesn't really make sense to move on from that contract this season. I wouldn't touch it. I wouldn't restructure it. There's plenty of restructures that we can do, including Taylor Moton, who you could save $8 million with a restructure. Von Bell's a good player. You could save $4 million there, $3.5 million with Austin Corbett, 3.3 with Hayden Hurst. These are the kind of restructures that I would do. You want to give a contract extension to Derrick Brown and minimize his cap hit this year? You could probably get yourself up before you sign any players to around $55 million in cap space. But you do have to go big game hunting. You have to go get your quarterback targets to feed him the football. And then I think you have to prioritize 2 expiring free agents in particular. Frankie Luvu at linebacker and Brian Burns, your pass rusher. That's a star player. That's going to be a $25+ million player for somebody. It might as well be for you. Write the check. Get it done. Burns is indeed that good of a player. From there, that takes you to the draft where you don't have your first round pick, courtesy of the trade for Bryce Young, and that's okay. Because I think there's still going to be pass catchers available for you. This is not going to be a one-year fix. But if you choose to invest in the supporting cast around your quarterback, even if you don't win the way you want to in year 1, you can be entertaining. And that will get people to buy the ticket to come in the front door as you segue out of the era of the picks that you traded for Bryce Young. You can have some excitement, some youth, some players that are growing together, and then you can focus on the rest of your roster. But Dave Canales, I think, is the right pick to be the man to fix your marquee investment in Bryce Young. And that is my 2 cents on the matter. I hope you guys enjoyed this discussion into the Carolina Panthers. I'm Kyle Crabbs, Joe Marino. We will be back again tomorrow. Let us know in the comments on YouTube whose pitch you like the best between Joe's and mine. We look forward to hearing from all of you, and we look forward to seeing you all again soon. You can find us on YouTube or wherever you listen to your favorite podcast. Hope to see you tomorrow.